Hello, good people. Yeah, my name is Manuel Nats, multimedia journalist from the Kenyan Diaspora Media. And I want to welcome you guys to the special interview with the remarkable humanitarian and change maker, Ms. Samantha Jacobs, co-founder and chairwoman of Me to You charity organization. Samantha, who has been on the front line in the fight against period poverty, a critical issue affecting millions of women and girls worldwide. In fact, UNESCO estimates that 1 in 10 school-age girls on the African continent do not attend school during menstruation. And in rural Western Kenya, 65% of women and girls cannot afford sanitary napkins. These heartbreaking statistics underscores the urgency of Samantha's mission. Through innovative projects like sewing academies and workshops, our organization is empowering women and girls with the tools, knowledge, and confidence to manage their menstruation without stigma or shame. Samantha, it's such a
Hi.
pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for
Thank you,
joining
Manuel.
us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Lovely introduction. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Yeah, so Sam, if I can call you that,
Mm-hmm.
let's start from the beginning. What
Sure.
inspired you to co-found this organization? And I understand that there's a part of this journey that started in Kenya. Maybe you can just shed light of how it came to be and how you chose Kenya and going into the different countries that you are in today.
Sure,
Maybe you
no
can
problem.
take us to the journey of how it began.
Sure. Well, I've also always, since I was a child, probably since 9 years old, I've been interested in and passionate actually about doing humanitarian work and community service. I'm from the United States. I grew up in the Midwest, so I grew up with parents and actually a family that always was giving back to the community in various types of way. And so it was always really important for me to give back, and I actually always really enjoyed it. And even with the type of job that I have working in entertainment and in journalism, I do the same thing. I help people to make their dreams come true and, just basically to stay on the pathway towards success. So they can fulfill their goals. And I see humanitarian work and philanthropy as along being the same lines. We're basically just helping people, giving them tools to survive and resources they need. So basically they can just stay on their pathway to success and fulfill whatever it is their purpose is. And for a lot of people, they're unable to accomplish their purpose or to stay on their path because they have little things that get in the way economically, such as period poverty. And period poverty essentially means that women and girls don't have proper access to menstrual hygiene supplies. That could be for economic reasons, or it could literally just be they live in certain areas very remotely or nomadically, where there's just no stores and resources for these type of supplies accessible to them. And so I've always just, like I said, just always been doing charity work since I was a child and mentoring. And so, now I'm here in Amsterdam and I received an invitation actually to this Kenyan fashion event. And it was held by an event organizer here, my colleague, and she's also the founder of Me to You. Her name is Joyce Sandos. And she's Kenyan. She's from Naivasha County, actually. And so she immigrated here to the Netherlands, and she was just having this fashion event, and part of her event was raising money to support period poverty. And so I had heard of the topic and I knew that it was an issue, we have everywhere, but I didn't quite understand how serious it was in East Africa, in particular Kenya. And so I contacted her because I was looking for an organization to get involved with humanitarian wise here in Europe. And so I thought this was a good topic. And then when I asked her a little bit more about it, and she started telling me information such as like young women, like the statistic, 1 out of 10 15-year-olds is trading their body for sex in exchange for supplies, and also about how much it costs for the pads in Kenya. That really disturbed me that, young women, or even to be honest, grown women, any woman, any female has to trade their body or be sexually exploited or abused for something that is our biological function that we get every month. And so I'm the type of person, I'm very solution based. So instead of just sitting up and being mad about it and being a keyboard warrior on the
Yeah.
internet, working with people about period poverty, I was like, let me just figure out how I can kind of take this into my hands and, and be helpful to the situation instead of just being, like what we call like a quarterback sitting on my couch. So, I asked her if I could get involved and helped, and she was just doing this sort of as a grassroots things where when she would go back to visit Kenya, she would bring, disposable pads or menstrual cups to Naivasha County. So I asked her if I could help her, formalize this into a registered organization, a registered charity, and really, take it more serious and be more organized and goal-oriented about who we wanted to help and how we could. And so we formed a board, and this was like right around 2020, actually, just before COVID started. So we formed a board and organization and decided, we would start off with menstrual cups because I thought it was very important to be sustainable because women, we get our cycle every month. So it didn't make sense to me to give schoolgirls or women kits of disposable when they're going to need it again next month. And to be honest, the cost for a disposable kit is the same price as a reusable kit. So I first started off with the menstrual cups, and that went really well because those actually last up to 10 years. But then, I wasn't completely comfortable with the idea of young girls, especially like 12, 13 years old, having to insert devices such as menstrual cups. It's not quite that easy, from that perspective. And also, I think, like only 30% of bathrooms in Kenyan schools have a girls' bathroom. So I kept just working on a solution of how to master these kits in a way where it's incredibly beneficial to the people we're helping and in a long-term way, so they don't have to worry month after month. So that's how I ended up, well, to be honest, COVID was a blessing in disguise. Because we really thought, how are we going to make this work? Because remember the travel restrictions, it just got really tight and we weren't able to fly in from Europe into Kenya, actually. But like I said, it was a blessing in disguise because, to be honest, the way we're doing it now is the way it should have been done in the first place, which is having all the volunteers on the ground be Kenyan, live in Kenya, actually live in the neighborhoods that we're servicing or the counties we're servicing. And I buy all the supplies actually within Kenya from Kenyan business owners. So it actually was a blessing in disguise because it made me change my logistics of who do I buy resources from and who is collaborating with us. So instead of us flying in and educating, it's much better for people who are there on the ground, such as Rose or Eris, who have their own organizations right there in Nairobi or in Baringo, to sit there and their eyes on the ground. They know what schools need help more than we do, but also we practice the circular economic model. So buying all of our resources and supplies in Kenya actually is empowering to the community as well, because every time I order, 100, 300 kits, that means the woman who owns the fabric store, the grocery store, she's getting money. The man who's the printer, he's make money off of printing the materials. The underwear lady, it's like everyone wins. So the whole economy, the whole Kenyan community wins when these children win. And so I think, that's really the best way to do it. I just don't want to provide aid to these women and to Kenyan communities. I also want to practice trade with them so that everybody can grow together. And I think that helps to create a very supportive situation for everyone involved.
Yeah, and I must commend you. That is a very wonderful idea that you took upon yourself to be able to find people who will be easier to engage with, even these girls, as you've spoken of, volunteers who are helping you out from the organizations here in Kenya. You've spoken about the using the reusable menstrual kits. Maybe you can shed light a bit on this. How did this come to pass, and you and your organization deciding that you will be using the reusable parts rather than buying the ones that are used only once? Because even from the initiatives that the government are trying to fight the poverty, the menstrual poverty, they usually give the girls the pads that are usable for only one time. So maybe explain to us how the idea came about and how you decided to pick it up until where the project is at this point.
Sure. Well, the idea came about is because, as I was saying, we get our period every month. So for me, I see other organizations and, they give disposable pads. Okay, so she's fine for that 1 month, and is the schoolgirls can maybe tell the creepy guy, no, we're not going to have sex with you this month because I have pads. But what about next month and the month after? Women, when we start our periods, that's usually around 12, 13 years old. We can have our periods up until almost our 60s. So for me, I believe in not just like giving someone food to eat for a day. I want them to give them something that they can eat for a very long time and even be able to feed themselves. So the reusable pads, I just did research and then I discovered PadMad. And those pads are made using, Kitenge fabric, which is a Kenyan fabric. They were made by Kenyan women. And they also last 3 to 5 years. And so for me, I was like, this is just a no-brainer. Number one, it's buying the supplies directly from women. It's helping Kenyan businesses, Kenyan employees, because some of the women who make these pads are actually incarcerated in the prison system in Kenya. So this is also a way that they're able to raise money to give to their children and families who are at home waiting for them. But yeah, these pads last 3 to 5 years. They're made of kitenge, so it's actually quite pretty. And when you give it to the children and they see made in Kenya and they see the fabric, you can just see like they automatically smile. It gives them so much pride to see that it's something that they made, that their people made, and to see the fabrics that they're so familiar with. It just gives them pride and it doesn't make them feel like they're in an inferior position. And so I just wanted to give them a long-term solution, and it's sustainable. And I see that Kenya is trying to go very earth-friendly. For example, you don't allow any plastic bags, which I like.
Yeah,
And so it didn't make sense to me to give disposable items, which is actually not very good environmentally for anywhere, especially for Kenya. So, the pricing for disposable pads is actually the same price as a pack of reusable pads. So for me, it was like, that was a no-brainer. Why spend money on something that in 1 week will be gone when I can give them a pack of pads that are actually pretty, very high quality, and last up to 5 years. So once we go to a school and we give these schoolgirls pads, that last them through all of junior high or high school. They don't need me anymore. And that's the way I like it. When I help someone, I don't want them to have to be codependent on me and look for me month after month. I want to be able to give them the tools they need so that they can be successful on their own and go forth and not be worried anymore about that topic anymore of, being on their period. When we first start out with the menstrual cups, that was because a lot of people actually were requesting it. And again, like I said, I wasn't necessarily comfortable with 12-year-old girls putting that device, within them, because it's tricky. But also I asked, why are you guys asking for cups and not reusable pads? And a couple of my liaisons told me, well, it's because underwear in certain areas is not actually normal. A lot of girls don't have proper underwear, or, their underwear is in bad shape. So this is why we ask for cups, because there's no underwear to actually put up. So I was just like, well, say less. So my next move was, okay, well, I'll just fundraise and put in the budget, adding underwear. So we went from just giving menstrual cups and doing the workshops, educating,
yeah,
to then giving them reusable pads. They get 3 pads. That gets them through a whole school day or work day. And we also give them underwear. Everything's cotton, so it's safe for the woman's skin and body, and just for durability. And so that's how we ended up doing that. I mean, when they said there was no underwear, there were a couple of workshops where they would literally ask the girls, raise your hand, if you have on proper underwear, if your underwear is in good shape. And there were some times where nobody could raise their hand. And I was just like, no, this is like just unacceptable to me. Young girls, women in general, should definitely have access to proper underwear, because that's how we prevent getting skin infections, urinary tract infections, just in general, our dignity and just the safety of our bodies. So when I realized that the reason that cups were so much popular than the pads because of underwear, it was just like, okay, well, we add underwear. And
yeah.
so we just switched over to the pads because it's also much safer for girls who have female genital mutilation can use pads. And the reusable pads, are healthy. It's not like disposable. Disposable sometimes is made from toxic materials or even recyclable materials that are not necessarily healthy to be against a woman's female genitalia. and the cups are not safe for female genital mutilation, or if a woman has endometriosis or ovarian cyst, it's not comfortable for the cups as well. So the reusable menstrual pads actually is just perfect for everyone. It's safe for everyone to use. It's not harmful, and it doesn't cause pain to any of the people we support. So whether they're, older or disabled, young 12-year-olds, or if they have female genital mutilation, everyone can use it and use it without having any adverse side effects to it.
Okay, that is very thoughtful too. I want us to move the conversations to your sewing academy for the reusable parts. I
Sure.
think I can say it's groundbreaking. Maybe can
Thank
you
you.
walk us through the idea, how it came about, and the process of training the students, how you undertake the course, the people who are able to do the course to the kids, and how the whole program is done. Maybe you can just shed light on that.
Sure, no problem. So the making of the pads came about when I was showing actually people the pads here in fundraising. People just always would say, wow, this is so beautiful. I never thought about sanitary pads being attractive or being pretty. And people started asking me, can I get those pads? I would like to use them too. And this is, here in Amsterdam, but also in the United States, people started saying this. And then also in Kenya, some people asked me, a couple of volunteers, wow, it would be nice if, our students or the women can actually learn how to make these. So I thought that was a great idea, because the next step is always in sustainability is how to actually make these resources yourself. So for about at least a minimum of 6 months, I just researched, looking at different fabrics, the health of it and next to our skin, what the competitors are doing. And then I figured out, okay, the sewing machine, that's a good way to obviously make pads, but sewing machine requires electricity. It requires having some place to have it, accessible. They break down constantly. And I was like, I don't know if this is really feasible to do on a large scale, from an economic position, but in a way that made everyone feel empowered. So I came up with hand sewing it. And I actually taught myself how to do it. So I started off, I created a pattern. I looked at some inspiration online on Pinterest, and I basically created a pattern, cut it out, and I did everything from scratch myself a couple of times first to see, could I actually make a hand-sewn sanitary pad? And can I make it look as good as what I'm buying my beneficiaries already? Because my quality assessment of how I do things is I actually try everything out on myself before I give it to the schoolgirls or the women. So if it's not good enough for me, then it's not good enough for them. So that's how I started even with the sewing program. Can I actually do this myself? And so I was able to accomplish it. Like I said, I did everything from scratch. I sketched out, the pad shape, got the Kitenge fabric and Ankara fabric as well, and tried it out. And it actually turned out really well. And I was like, all right, so this I think could work. I can do this within a couple of hours. And I even had a young teenager try it out for me, and I could see that they could do it as well. So I was like, all right, the kids, I think that they're ready for this. And, Kenyans, you guys are very entrepreneurial and very crafty and creative. So that's how I came about doing that. I made sure I could do it myself. And then so I taught my liaisons like Rose and Rosa Mongo how to do it. And we had, quite a few virtual seminars just like this. And I just provided them with the patterns. I provide them with the fabric. So when they get the kits, they each get a kit, whether it's a student or, a grown woman. I educate boys as well. They're part of the class. They get all the materials they need to make a minimum of 3 pads. So they get fabric, they get the insert for the fabric, they get needle, thread, scissors, patterns, you name it, and they even get a lesson from a seamstress and from our liaisons. So the girls and boys, they learn within a few hours how to actually make these pads by hand, and then they can take those supplies home and also show it to their family members and teach them. And the one thing that they're learning is that you can take a lot of different fabrics, including a towel, a terry cloth towel, the fabric that's kitenge that's used in dresses or even on the curtains. All
Yeah.
that fabric, as long as it's hygienic, can actually be used to remake a pad. And so I fundraised and got the money, to be able to buy these supplies. And now we're educating students and also grown women in Kenya, and it's going really well because in that same day, they actually get a certificate of completion. So when they leave, not only do they leave with the kit, with supplies, they're also leaving with a certificate that they can use to either get a job in the garment district, or if they just want to start their own business themselves, making, reusable pads for the community. So for me, that was just like the natural next step is teaching them how easy it is to actually create this for themselves and to be even able to start a business and support themselves if they like.
Okay. Maybe you can tell us where these classes have started happening, or maybe the whole idea of the lessons and that for the kids creating their own reusable pads. Maybe where have you started it on, and maybe what's your plan moving forward
Sure.
with the
Well,
project?
we've started in Baringo County, in particular in Eldama Ravine. So we've been there and we're extending actually into Nairobi County this month. And then in next year, we're going to just keep expanding throughout Kenya, through all the counties, maybe Busia County, Kajiado, Naivasha, and then into Uganda as well. Because we're also distributing pads in Uganda and northern Uganda, and now we just entered into southwest region of Uganda as well. So our main goal this year has been Baringo County, and now, as I said, going into Nairobi. So we do educate both teenage boys, teenage girls, and adult women. And it's free. We don't charge anything for these courses or for the supplies or anything. It's all 100% free to empower them to, either start their own business or just to be self-reliant, because I feel that is really the key to success, especially with period poverty, is just that they have all the resources they need actually right there, and just being creative with your mind to create the resources, taking those resources and actually creating an actual tool that is useful. So the boys are actually really, really good at this. I've noticed they're very quick learners. It's very great to see, and you can actually see who's going to be like a fashion designer or who has the skills to be a seamstress. You can just see it because some of them these students never had resources to these tools before. And now that they just got this needle and thread and a pair of scissors and they see a pattern, they see it's not that intimidating, especially doing it by hand. When you do things on the sewing machine, it can be really kind of, how can you say, clumsy. It's always something, going wrong with the sewing machine. And so
Yeah,
that's why I wanted to do hand sewing, because no matter who you are or where you are or what your money is, how much or less you have of it, you don't need electricity. You don't need this machine in order to create this. You just need your hand, and you need a needle and thread, and you need to find some fabric that's clean. And I find that very empowering because having a sewing machine, they break down constantly, and you need
yeah,
electricity for that as well. So I wanted to make it where it was just so accessible and totally unintimidating for all of our students, because I want them to be able to teach others. So that's how we're teaching them in the class. It's so easy that you can go home and you can teach your mom, your aunt, your little sister this.
yeah. Maybe since you started these projects that you're doing here in Kenya,
Mhm.
since the COVID times, and as you've been moving throughout the years, maybe you can talk to us about maybe the biggest challenges that you faced in your fight against menstrual poverty.
Sure. The biggest fight that we've actually seen has honestly just been some of the political unrest that's been happening in Kenya, such as when there's the riots or the floods. One of the biggest things, I don't know if you remember, is when there were bandits who were actually
Yeah,
raiding schools by gunpoint. That happened in a couple of the areas where we were actually trying to service or had been. So it's just been like, making sure that our kids and the volunteers are safe, but trying to overcome, natural disasters such as the flooding, and also just the political unrest with the riots. This year, it really did, slow us down a little bit because it just was not possible. It wasn't safe, actually, for them to go and carry out these workshops, but we still figure out how to do it. We just had to downsize a little bit and move a little bit more quietly. It was the same thing during COVID, though. COVID, you can only have a maximum of 20 people when we had thought about having 200, kids at once in the school. So, we just had to be strategic and had to think outside of the box. And really, patience is a virtue in this case. And we get it done. It's just you just have to keep going and just have patience. And, you just have to figure out some workarounds and maybe use different venues. Because as you may have seen, like even when we're in Dandora, we don't have an actual facility that we do workshops from. I'll stand right on top of a pile of trash and do the workshop if that's what I need to do. So that's the kind of resilience and flexibility that we try to employ because we know how serious it is for women and girls to not have these supplies. So we don't let anything get in our way, but we do, adhere to the law. Absolutely.
Okay, you've spoken it very well about how the period poverty here in Kenya is very alarming. Maybe you can speak to us about, I know you've spoken about the liaison officers that you're dealing with, but maybe you can give us a general overview of the kind of partnerships or collaborations that have been instrumental in scaling your impact in the country.
Sure. It's been really impactful working with my liaisons. They each have their own NGO going for them. So for example, we have Rose with Oasis for the Vulnerable. We have Eris with Big Five Center in Nairobi. And we now have a cooperation out in Kajiado where they focus on, equal rights and gender equity and fighting against FGM. So each of these institutions has been really effective in helping us get to where we need to be because they're actually there on the ground. So they know which schools really are in dire situation, but they also speak the language. For example, I'm trying to think of the name. It's called Ilkamus, I think it's called Ikamus.
Well,
And
yeah, the
Rose has gone to
Chamas.
this area. Yes. And they're like one of the oldest Nilotic groups
Yeah.
in Africa, much less Kenya. And they don't just speak Swahili, they speak Mach. So it's important for us that we're able to communicate with our beneficiaries eye to eye on a way that they feel comfortable with, because I feel also when the volunteers look like the people that they're helping, it's effective. I don't really like, in the Western world, we have a term called poverty porn. And that means like when people come from other countries and they want to take like selfies and pictures with people, oh, look at me helping the poor people. I don't like that sort of vibe. I don't like that sort of energy, and I don't like to depict the people that I help in that light. If you notice, even on our websites and our social media, I never have any photos that makes someone look unattractive or that shows them in despair. I don't exploit another person's grief or distress. I'm very much against that. So it is important for me that my volunteers are actually Kenyan. Just like in Uganda, all of the volunteers are 100% Ugandan. Because I think that makes our beneficiaries not only feel better about themselves when they're communicating with volunteers, but it's just much more effective philanthropy because it's people who are actually of your flesh and of your blood. They speak your language. They actually know what's really going on, and they're not making their beneficiaries feel inferior because we're actually neighbors, we're sisters. And so that's how I look at my volunteers. It's like we're family. It's like a sisterhood. We all really care about helping each other, and they really are passionate about helping the people in the community. So we have like Red Cross sometimes collaborates with them. The Rotary Club has been absolutely excellent in Kenya. Rose, she's actually Rotarian and now the president of her chapter, but they have been helping us for several years and have been just so dynamic in helping us to identify areas and even get to these remote areas such as Samburu. Eris has gone to in Umoja, which is a matriarch women's only village, just women and children. And regular people, outsiders, cannot go into these areas as easily. And I don't actually think they should have access, if you know what I mean, so easily. I like that the way we do it, it protects the culture, protects the people, and it's not exploitative. We're just literally there just to help them live their best life and just to, give them some peace of mind. So the partnerships we have are very much based upon the fact of what is your relationship to the people you are helping. I don't like to bring in a lot of outsiders. I don't believe in that. I like it when people are homegrown.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Looking ahead, what does the future hold for the Me to You charity? And maybe you can speak about any upcoming projects that you're particularly excited about, and yeah, the kind of advancements that you wish to make in terms of the projects that you're doing?
Sure. Well, our goal is just to continue to, extend our outreach throughout of the whole of Kenya. We probably have touched about over 30 schools we have supported in Kenya. We're in over 15 different counties in Kenya. So our goal is, to be honest, I mean, my ultimate goal would be to eradicate period poverty completely from Kenya. And I'm hoping to do that with the Sewing Academy. Because I feel with the Sewing Academy, them learning how to actually make their own pads, but even being able to start a business from that, that maybe even can translate to international business, not just providing it to their neighbors, but even abroad. I think that can be incredibly empowering for them. So that is my hope. That is with the Sewing Academy, that everywhere throughout Kenya, women and school girls and boys know how to make these pads and can start their own businesses and start to, provide support to their local neighbors with this supply at cost-effective rates, and they can actually make a living. So I'm hoping that, that's able to spread throughout the country, because not only will that help them with making pads, they'll learn how to patch up their socks, how to fix their school uniforms. It's like having the skill of sewing is a life skill and can lead to so many other benefits and blessings for them. So, that's the goal, is to eradicate period poverty out of Kenya, but also in Uganda, to spread the outreach of food we're helping there, because they're in extreme need, probably even more dire than Kenya's situation, and also extend the school there next year. And then over the few years, we would just like to extend throughout all of Africa, particularly East Africa, go into Sudan. I would like to actually go into the war-torn areas where we have the genocides, such as in what's happening in Congo, again, what's happening in certain areas of Sudan, even into Palestine. So that is actually one of my goals, is, obviously focus on East Africa, but also to pay attention to the areas where there's genocidal situations and where there's war. Because a lot of people think about, okay, we need food for the children, and, and obviously when you're in war, food, safety, and water, but nobody ever says menstrual hygiene supplies. Women and schoolgirls are still getting on their period while bombs are dropping and while there's genocide happening. They're still getting on their period. But it doesn't seem like anyone's really talking about that or addressing that situation. We only hear about food and water and shelter. So I would like Me to You Charity to be able to raise some awareness on that, particularly in war-torn areas and where we have genocide, that, we also have this really severe need of period poverty, and we need to really help these women and children address that. Because it's bad enough having, PTSD and dodging, gunfire, but imagine like you're on your period and you may not even know what that is. You don't have any supplies, you have blood, running down your legs. It's just like, it's a very distressful situation. And so I would like to actually bring them comfort in those areas as much as I can.
Okay. I would want us to get maybe a bit into a maybe personal connection. Maybe you can tell us how, because definitely your work has clearly impacted countless lives from here in Baringo to Nairobi, there in Dandora. Maybe you can explain to us, how has leading Me to You shaped you personally?
For me personally, it's just very uplifting. It's humbled me. Uh, And I feel very empowered actually too, because when I first heard about the situation, like I said, it really makes you angry when you hear, women are going through the situation that little girls are being exploited, by older men. So for me, it just feels very empowering. And I feel like instead of, like I said, just being like, a keyboard warrior, I'm actually taking action, but it's been quite humbling, because when you see how resilient other groups of people are and how they handle their situations and adversity, it makes you look at your life and see how blessed you truly are, but also to be more appreciative of the resources we have. Period poverty is everywhere, but the difference in America is that we can go into McDonald's, we can go into our school bathroom and easily get toilet paper or paper towels. All of our schools, for the most part, have bathrooms. and like I said, paper towels and things like that are just easily accessible. So it just starts to make you realize how the little things in life that we sometimes take for granted, we shouldn't be. So it's been quite a humbling experience for me, but it's also been really a blessing as well because I've met so many wonderful people in Kenya, and in Uganda, just lovely people who really care. Like I've met you a couple years ago, actually, at one of my workshops, and it's just, honestly, it's so beautiful to see that there's other people out here who care and sincerely care and are willing to like put in the work to uplift their communities and just keep people on the path.
Okay, as we come to an end, maybe you can just share with us what's your message to individuals or let's say organizations who might want to join the fight against period poverty?
I would say that we need all the help we can get. No amount of effort is insignificant. Every little step helps to put a brick, to build this wall to defeat period poverty. So anyone who wants to join the fight, please, you are welcome and you are needed. And I would suggest to go about it in a way that is as sustainable as possible, because again, we get our period every month. So use the resources wisely and the money wisely in a way that is helping your beneficiaries in the long term. Giving them something that only lasts a week is okay, but if you can give them something that they can use over a couple of years, then you've really, really brought them some peace of mind. I would highly suggest buying the supplies locally and figuring out how to do it. It's much easier than it sounds. It's intimidating at first, but it's worth the research. And it's much easier than importing products from China or from the West that are disposable. And I would say also that when you go into the communities, have volunteers who are actually from that community. Don't fly in people who look nothing like the people you're helping, because that just creates a weird complex, sometimes inferiority complex and sometimes can be culturally offensive. But also when you go into a community, ask permission from the people who are leaders in that community. Talk to the parents first, talk to the school administrators, talk to the local chiefs, and actually tell them, what is it that you're coming to that neighborhood for? Just don't show up and act like you know more than the adults there, because that's disrespectful. So show respect to the leadership and the people in that community, collaborate with them, invite them to help you and to work with you, and get their blessing, because it actually will get you much. They'll give you so much information that you wouldn't even be able to guess or know otherwise. So that's what I would definitely suggest. Yeah, always talk to the people, the adults, before you show up and talk to the kids. Absolutely, because that's a
Yeah,
safety issue.
okay, that's a very wonderful message that to share with
Yeah.
individuals who would want to join your fight. Maybe lastly, if you could envision the world 10 years from now with the success of your mission, what would that look like? Paint us a picture.
You said if 10 years from now, the success, what it would look like?
Yeah,
What
the
it looks
success
like
of your
is
mission.
that a period poverty would be not even a problem anymore, and that Kenya would be known for actually as being like the #1 manufacturer of reusable sanitary pads for the world, and actually exporting these pads to the rest of the world for other people to use, and it uplifting these communities and bringing Kenyans that were in poverty, bringing them out of poverty. So that's what I would like to see, is these students that are in my academy, that they're actually really successful entrepreneurs and business owners, and that they're actually, starting businesses and even exporting these pads around the world. So that's what I would like to see, the eradication of period poverty and businesses thriving and booming in Kenya because of this.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I don't think I
Thank
can
you for
thank you
having me.
enough. I don't think I can thank you enough, Samantha, for sharing your inspiring story and shedding light on the critical issue of period poverty. Your
Thank you.
work, yeah, your work with the Me to You charity is definitely a beacon of hope for so many, and we're honored to amplify your message. To our wonderful viewers, let's join hands to make a difference. Stay tuned for more stories of change makers transforming lives across the world. Thank you so much
Thank
again,
you.
Samantha.
Thank you, Manu. It was a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again.